Hello everyone, thank you for coming for the live webinar. My name is Lobsang Wangdu.
I'm Yolanda O'Bannon. We're both with Yowangdu Tibetan Culture. We're so happy to have you here. And let's get started with our Welcome to How to Travel to Tibet mini course. Let me just switch over here. Hold on a second. Okay. So as we said, this is our How to Travel to Tibet mini course. And we want to let you know that you're in the right place if you want to go to Tibet, but you don't know how, and maybe you are confused about the rules, worried about high altitude, running out of time, or unsure who to trust. These are all common problems. In this class, we're going to show you how to get to Tibet, enjoy your time there, and get home safely. Both of us will be participating today. I'm Yolanda. I will be delivering the main presentation, and Lobsang and I will both be available for your questions. You can ask us questions in the chat, which you should see in a chat room below the video. If you can see the chat below the video, please go ahead and type something in the chat to let us know. If you can't write in the chat for any reason, you can go over to our Facebook page and ask your question there. You can find a link to our Facebook page under the video. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can during the online mini course. Please let us know you understand that you can ask questions at any point in the class by jumping on the chat and saying, "Yes, I got it," or something like that. Go ahead and start asking your questions, and we'll get to them during the Q&A sections. One thing we'd like to know is what is causing you worry or stress about your trip. So before we move on, tell us a little bit, let us tell you a little bit about ourselves. So we're a Tibetan American couple living in the San Francisco Bay Area. We both work at the University of California, but our passion is supporting Tibet. We have deep life and work experience with Tibet. Lobsang has lived in Tibet for 17 years and was a monk for 20 years. I lived for a year in the heart of the Tibetan community in Dharamsala, India, and I have traveled 3 times to Tibet. We've both worked and volunteered for Tibet for the last 20 years. We deeply believe that Tibetan culture helps make the world a better place, and that the heart of Tibetan culture is an incredible treasure that needs to be shared and preserved. So our goal is always to help people around the world experience Tibet for themselves, and at the same time to support Tibetan culture and local Tibetan-owned businesses. Today we're going to teach you the easiest and best way to travel to Tibet so that you can experience it for yourself. So first we'll talk about simple ways to cut through the confusion about your visa and the permit, and then we'll give you some important tools for staying healthy at high altitude. Does this sound like something you need? Please type yes in the chat, or let us know what else is making Tibet travel hard for you. All we have is about an hour together, so planning a trip to Tibet is a big topic, and we're going to give you everything we can in this hour to get you pointed in the right direction. We'll be your coaches for a day, and at the end of the hour together, we'll show you where you can go to get more information if you want it, to get more help. A video replay for this online class will be permanently available to members of our Experience Tibet membership community, but everyone here is going to get all the slides from this class, plus a printable handout of a very great little trip out of Lhasa that is super convenient to take, but for some reason it's not very commonly taken. We'll also give you a referral to a reliable Tibetan-owned agent. We'll give you access to that at the end of the class, so stick around with us to get that. Now, let's hear from you about Tibet travel. What's making your Tibet travel hard? So tell us in the chat something that is worrying you or stressing you out about the trip. Let's see where everyone is at. We totally relate to the stress and confusion of trying to travel to Tibet. So we first decided to try to go to Tibet together in 2002, and this was Lobsang's first trip back after many years away, and it was my first trip ever. We had no idea what was needed to get into Tibet or how to do it. There was a lot of conflicting information, and it seemed like it changed all the time. And sometimes Tibet was open and sometimes it was closed, and we were worried that we personally couldn't get in. But we didn't want to ask the Chinese consulate too many questions, so we just blundered around through the process. Plus, we had no idea how to deal with altitude sickness, so we were pretty nervous when we got there. But you can get there faster, easier, and safer, and traveling to Tibet doesn't have to be so confusing. So regardless of what your questions or challenges are, everyone can do a few things to make the planning and the trip a lot easier. But we can almost guarantee you, if you don't do what we're going to tell you in the presentation, that the process will be confusing and probably painful and possibly not successful. So we get it. There are so many questions. How do I get into Tibet? What kind of visa do I need to get into Tibet? Do I need a special permit? Is it hard to get in? I'm a Tibet supporter. Will I be denied? Can I say I'm going to Tibet on the Chinese visa form? And there's a lot of information out there available about Tibet, but it is exhausting to dig through it all to find the right answers. So plus things change all the time. So here's a picture of the road near the Nepal-Tibet border just after the 2015 earthquake. It's still closed, but it doesn't have to be so hard. So getting into Tibet is faster and easier if you use reliable, up-to-date help. Most people don't do this. They try to do it on their own like they do with other countries. But traveling to Tibet is different than traveling to other countries, and even very experienced travelers need some help. So let's see how we can help you do this. First, let's get clear about the whole permit and visa situation. It's really simple. First, you need a Chinese visa to enter Tibet. Second, you need a Tibet permit to get into the Tibetan Autonomous Region. Okay, so now let's look at getting you some help for the visa. Here's our recommendation. Do yourself a big favor and use a visa agency. So that means using a paid visa service rather than applying for your visa directly through a Chinese consulate. I've traveled a lot all over the world. Normally I don't use a visa agency. Usually it's simple enough to go straight to a consulate to get a visa for a country. But Tibet is different, and we strongly recommend you use an agency, and here's why. So there are major benefits to using a visa service, and such as it's a lot quicker and easier to get help. They have online chats. Some of them have phone services. And the visas, another thing is the visa service can alert you to problems on your application before you turn it in. And this is really invaluable. Also, the services are up to date on the rules and the policies, and we find it a lot less stressful than dealing directly with a consulate. And then you can get extra services and help if you want. So one of the services, Travel Visa Pro, has a service in which they will fill out the form for you as an extra paid addendum. And then there's safety in numbers, and by that I mean that the consulate is used to receiving a lot of correct applications from the visa agencies. So I think this is in our favor when we apply through a visa agency. So basically, it's the visa service's job to make it easy for you, while it's not the Chinese consulate job to make it easy for you. That's kind of the bottom line. But there is a downside, and that it's if you use the visa services, it costs you some money. So in the US, the basic fee is $79, and that's charged in as we record this. So, and that's charged in addition to the $140 that's currently charged by the consulate. So the base fee of the visa is $140, and then if you use the visa service, it's $79 on top of that. So then the question is, which visa agency should you use? And we recommend these. So and we recognize that there are people in countries not represented here tonight. So if you you might want to ask us separately and let us do a little more research. So the ones that we know right now are, for the US, we recommend Travel Visa Pro. For Canada, UK, Germany, or Indonesia, so citizens of Canada, UK, Germany, Indonesia use Visa HQ. And citizens of Australia, we recommend visaforchina.org. And that is the last one, the visaforchina.org. The only reason we recommend it is because we don't know of any other visa service for Australians. So visaforchina.org, unfortunately, is owned by the CITS, and that's a Chinese state related tourism agency, which we usually prefer not to recommend. But remember, we'll give you the slides for this presentation a little later, including those ones that we missed at the beginning, and they'll have links. So if you want to help remembering these names, you'll get them at the end. Now let's look at some tips for using the visa agencies. We don't have time to go into all the details of the visa form, but we do offer a step-by-step guide in our Experience Tibet membership community if you want to go there. So here are a few important tips. Most importantly, don't mention Tibet on your Chinese visa application. I'm going to say that again. Don't mention Tibet on your Chinese visa application. So when the form asks for your planned itinerary in China, you could just mention your entry city, then a couple of other Chinese cities. For example, you could list Beijing, Shanghai, and Xi'an. You don't have to mention Tibet, and you are allowed to decide where to travel after you arrive in China. If you do mention Tibet, you will very likely, almost certainly, run into trouble and very possibly not get your visa for China. If you want to go to Tibet directly from Nepal, it's a special situation and you need to apply for a Chinese group visa in Kathmandu. So this is a slightly more complicated situation, and our partner agents in Lhasa have great connections with good agents in Kathmandu that they will connect you with when you book a trip through them. So here are a couple more tips for the Chinese visa application. So usually the visa form asks for proof of your flight, and this can be confusing because you don't want to buy your flight until you have the visa, right? So Travel Visa Pro told us that the consulate simply wants to see a round-trip reservation. It does not need to be a purchased ticket, which is great. So sometimes you can get a reservation through a travel agent or possibly through online flight booking agencies. And then this is a similar situation for hotel bookings. As of this summer, your proof of hotel reservation could be just the first night or couple nights of your trip, for the first couple nights. So, sorry, either the first night or the first couple nights. So basically the idea is that you're saying that on the visa form, you know, the idea that you're presenting is that you're going to decide about the rest of your trip later. You don't even have to say that, but that's implied. So if you have questions about any of this, you just ask the visa agency what is required. They're really great about answering all the questions, except about one thing, and that is about mentioning Tibet on your visa application. About that, it's probably better not to ask. So just don't mention Tibet on your visa application, and then about all other questions you can ask the visa agency. Okay, let's move on. So our mistake when we've gone to Tibet in the past was not using a visa agency for our first 2 trips. We tried to do it on our own, and we were scared to ask questions, so we were scrolling around the confusing Chinese consulate website and literally sweating it out standing in line at the Chinese consulate. We were just so nervous. I don't know if these folks were nervous, but we were extremely nervous, like these folks in various cities. And then finally, we asked a friend who has traveled to Tibet 8 times, and we took his advice to use a travel agency, and it was so much easier. So by taking his advice and using a visa agency, we breezed through the whole process. So here's an email exchange between me and my travel buddy about our visas in 2015. So now that you know how to get your Chinese visa under control, what about the Tibet permit? So remember, you only need a permit if you're going to the Tibetan Autonomous Region. And if you don't know, here's a little guidance about the Tibetan Autonomous Region, which is also called the TAR. So when China took over Tibet, they cut up what we call Tibet into parts. And the largest part is called the TAR, and it is basically central and western Tibet. And this is what Chinese consider Tibet. In this map, you can see in orange the entire Tibetan cultural area, and this is actually what Tibetans consider to be Tibet. So, however, the Chinese government considers Tibet only to be the Tibetan Autonomous Region, the TAR. So on the map, you can see the TAR outlined in white. And this region includes most of the most famous tourist sites in Tibet, like Lhasa, Mount Kailash, the north side of Everest Base Camp. And to visit anything in the TAR, anything within this white bounded area, you must have a special Tibet permit in addition to your Chinese visa. The government also requires that you hire a guide for every day of your trip and a car and driver for the days that you're outside of Lhasa. But there are huge Tibetan regions that are outside the TAR which do not require a special permit. So these are, generally speaking, what Tibetans call Kham and Amdo, and again, they do not require a special permit to enter for the most part, though there are always some closed regions inside these areas. So you can travel independently in these areas. But hiring a guide is still recommended because traveling in Kham and Amdo is really not like other Asian travel or anywhere in the world. So there's little or no tourism infrastructure. There are still some political concerns, and there are areas that are closed, like often suddenly or unexpectedly, and then the distances are quite great. So personally, I would not travel alone in Kham or Amdo. I've traveled all over the world, including in some African nations, and I wouldn't do it. So we do suggest that you travel with at least a guide, if not a guide, and a driver. Okay, so now you know which areas you need a permit for. Now, how do you get a permit if you need one? The answer is really simple. If you're going to the Tibetan Autonomous Region and you need a permit, your Tibetan travel agent handles all the permits for you, all of them, end of story. Like, they don't need to get it. You can't get it even for yourself. They must handle it for you. But in fact, this makes it a lot easier for you. So over 300 Yuangdo travelers have gotten their permits to travel to the Tibetan Autonomous Region this way. So first, they connect with one of our partner Tibetan-owned agencies. Then they send a copy of their visa to the agent. The agent obtains all the necessary permits, and then the agent gets the permit to them through email or hard copy. And if you're taking the train, you only need a copy. But if you're flying, you need an original hard copy of the permit. So they'll mail that to your the last hotel that you're in China, in mainland China, before you're going to Tibet. So you can see why it's so critical to have a reliable Tibetan agent. So your whole trip to Tibet depends on it. So everyone faces the problem of knowing how to get a reliable Tibetan agent. So it's truly impossible to judge which agencies are good by just searching online. If you want to help getting connected to a reliable Tibetan-owned agency, we can help you. We'll give you a link for a referral form near the end of the class. For now, just remember that getting into Tibet successfully is faster and easier if you use reliable, up-to-date help. So this is not theory. We've seen it over and over with our Tibet travelers. And when you get help with these two critical pieces, everything else falls into place much more smoothly and easily. So now you know what to do for your visa and your permit. And if your Tibet travel planning has been hard, it's probably because you've been trying to do it on your own. Now you know how to do it easier and faster, just connecting to the right services. And you can do it on your own the hard way, like we tried to do, or you can use one of the recommended visa agencies and travel agencies to make it a lot easier. Okay, now it's time to take some questions. So use the chat box under the video to ask us anything you like, and we will point you in the right direction. So we also want to let you know that if you join the Experience Tibet community during this online class, you can save up to 30% off of our regular price. This is a great deal. To learn more, just click on the yellow button below the video, and if you can't see that button, you can see the link in the chat. So we'll do that shortly. Okay. We'll put that button in the chat soon. Okay, so let's answer some of your questions. So these are questions about, so Ket says, I have a Singapore passport and I am ethnically Chinese, if it makes any difference. No. I don't think so, Ket. I can't be 100% sure, I'll tell you honestly, but our travel agents can definitely, they're totally up on all of that. But I don't think there's any problem with Singapore, how do I say, an ethnic Chinese with a Singapore passport. That should be fine. I was nearly there in April, but circumstances changed and I couldn't make it. I'm actually looking to see if I can volunteer my time in Tibet with orphanages or schools. Do you want to answer that?
I think it's really difficult to do volunteer work in Tibet. It used to be pretty easy. Since 2008, they have so many restrictions, but we don't know 100%. still they're allowed to, foreigners can volunteer work in Tibet.
Yeah, we think it's really very difficult to do that. Yeah, which is very unfortunate. However, you can probably, we're pretty sure that you can volunteer in the Tibetan community elsewhere. Like you could volunteer in Dharamsala, for example. Like it might be it's possible to find some opportunities there. Okay, another question. The Chinese consulate says to get the Tibet permit first before giving the visa, and the Tibet Travel Bureau says get the visa first before the permit. This is very frustrating. Yeah, unfortunately, this is what happens if you mention Tibet on the visa application. So that's exactly what they do. They put you in this crazy catch-22 of telling that you need one thing or the other first. I'm assuming, I can't see the chat right now, but I'm assuming that you have that you've already submitted a visa application. What I would personally do, as I'm going to assume that's true, so what I would personally do is wait a while.
Maybe 6 months.
6 months or a year. I know this is terribly frustrating. I mean, you could try to resubmit it without mentioning Tibet. I don't know if that would be a red flag or not. But I would just wait a while and then submit your visa application without mentioning Tibet.
Yeah, you never want to put it, you are going to Tibet in your actual form.
Yeah. Sorry that you have that experience. It's horrible. Okay. As another traveler asked us earlier, so is travel to Lhasa closed around the Chinese New Year? This is when we have a 2 weeks holiday. So, Lupsang?
I think during the Chinese New Year in February, it should be fine most of the time. And then, if we're very close to the March, then maybe they may have restrictions. Normally, whole March in Tibet is closed for foreign traveler.
Yeah. And then we are currently... Oh, okay. And they also ask, we are currently living in Guangzhou, China. Will our work visa be affected if we travel to Tibet? We don't think so. We've had a lot of travelers who live and work in China, expats, non-Chinese nationals who live and work in China and apply to go to Tibet. And what you need to do is to get a letter from your employer. So our partner agents in Tibet, our Tibetan-owned agents that we work with, have formats for that, and they can tell you exactly what you need to get, from your agent. Okay, so let's move on to another very common, and we're going to have more questions, so please do keep answering your questions. Okay, I'm sorry, let's just check really quick on this one. Billy says, we flew from Kathmandu to Lhasa in October 2014. We were almost denied entry into the TAR because we only had one copy of our visa. They required 2 copies. That's a really good point. Really good to know. So everybody take heed on that one. We were finally allowed after 45 minutes of negotiating with the 3-star. Okay, and then sorry, one more from Tenzin Yindak. So he says, I'm a Tibetan born in India with an American passport. Can you tell us how different it is for me to get a Tibet permit? It's very difficult.
Yeah, actually, Tibetan Americans, you cannot, unfortunately, we cannot help. Basically, you need to go through this, you need a relative or family in Tibet. They have to send you invitation letter. Then you go to Chinese consular. You have to get a special visa for that. The only Tibetans we can't help in this situation.
It's super challenging because you have to go to the Chinese consulate and request this special visa, and then they essentially investigate you, but they often hold your visa for, 6 months, a year, 2 years. It can hold a really long time. Sometimes you never hear back. Sometimes they just give it. And it seems very random. Like sometimes people do get the permit and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to keep on with the next section, and then we'll come to another question in a moment. So the question is, how can I prevent altitude sickness? And here's Lobsang in Tibet on his first day back after 17 years away with a big old headache and not feeling so well. So asking how to prevent altitude sickness is a really good question, because altitude sickness is a serious issue in Tibet. So it's no joke, and that's because you are rarely below 10,000 feet or 3,000 meters in Tibet. And also many travelers to Tibet get some form of altitude sickness, and you have no way of knowing if you're going to get it. So, by the way, physical fitness and age make no difference. You can be a 20-year-old marathon runner, and you essentially don't have any better chances than a 70-year-old not very healthy person of getting altitude sickness. The problem with getting altitude sickness, one, is at the least you're going to feel unwell on your trip, and two, at worst, you risk serious illness or death. So we encourage you to learn from our mistakes. So we've made the same mistakes that many people do, and the first time we went to Tibet, we didn't know anything much about altitude sickness, so we flew to Lhasa from Chengdu, and after about 12 hours or so, we both got headaches and flu-like symptoms. So even Lobsang, who lived in Tibet for 17 years as a kid and a young adult. So we did one thing right, that we felt bad and we rested for 3 days. So we just stayed around the house and didn't go higher. But then a few days later, we drove up to Namsa Lake and we felt terrible. Namsa is quite high. I think it's about 15,000 feet. So we didn't sleep, felt really bad the day this photo was taken. And we took the picture sort of like a joke, but we really did feel terrible. And I don't have a good memory of Namsa. So even though it's a really beautiful place. So how can you avoid making this kind of mistake? So again, to prevent death or severe illness from altitude sickness, you just follow 3 simple rules from altitude sickness experts. And those rules are: first, recognize and respond to warning signs. 2, ascend slowly and never go higher when you have symptoms, even minor ones. And 3, descend quickly if your symptoms are getting worse while you're at rest at the same altitude. Let's talk about these a little more deeply. So there are 3 basic types of altitude sickness. There's AMS, HACE, and HAPE, and you can progress from one to the other. So let's look at just some of the hallmark warning signs: headache, nausea and vomiting, confusion, lack of coordination, and breathlessness at rest. And then we'll see some more of those. So the topic is too much to go into detail here, but here are just a very few of the symptoms of the 3 types of altitude sickness. So HACE and HAPE in particular can result rapidly in death if ignored. So AMS means acute mountain sickness, HACE means high altitude cerebral edema, and HAPE means high altitude pulmonary edema. So basically, mild altitude sickness can develop into problems with your brain and your lungs. And you can avoid that if you follow these rules. The 3 rules that we mentioned, and we'll just mix them up in a slightly different way. So here's rule 1 and 3, and that's to respond to warning signs and descend. So if you have even mild symptoms like a headache, dizziness, sleeplessness, shortness of breath, assume it is altitude sickness. Don't assume that you have a cold in Lhasa or sinus problems or something. It's like, assume that you have altitude sickness and do not ascend further. Then if you don't get better, if you don't begin to get better, or you have any of the symptoms of HACE and HAPE, especially if you have, an unbalanced gait when you walk, or if your brain isn't functioning correctly. And this is something that you can help each other. If you're traveling with other people, it's really good to try and be mindful of kind of what's a normal behavior from the other person and if they're acting differently, and then descend immediately. Then the second rule, if you remember, was to ascend slowly. And so here are some tips for ascending slowly. So 1, don't fly to Lhasa. So many people fly to Lhasa, but if you fly to Lhasa, you are usually going from sea level to about 12,000 feet in a few hours or less. So this is the dead opposite of ascending slowly. Also, flying to Lhasa puts you at some risk. It's relatively low risk, but it does put you at risk of pulmonary edema. And then, just kind of immediately. Another one is don't drive from Kathmandu to Lhasa. This is, right now it's not possible to drive from Kathmandu to Lhasa because the overland route is closed. But even if you have the chance, it's the way that the road and the way that you stop goes, the ascension is just too high, too fast. We recommend take the train from Xining and spend at least a night in Xining, preferably 2 nights. So Xining is a good intermediate altitude and gives you a better chance to acclimate. So Xining is on the edge of the Tibetan Plateau, so it's in far, what we think, western China and eastern Tibet. Also, don't go higher if you have any symptoms, and do ask your doctor for altitude sickness medicine if you have to ascend quickly. So we're not doctors, so we're not recommending that you take it, but it's a great idea to ask your doctor for this. So we have much more information about this in our Experience Tibet membership, including some good basic itineraries to take to prevent altitude sickness. And the bottom line is that you just need to listen to the altitude sickness experts. There is no reason people should die from AMS. This simply cannot be emphasized too much. If you have symptoms of AMS, do not ascend any higher. Violating these simple rules have resulted in many tragic deaths. So many travelers to Tibet will experience mild AMS, but as the International Society for Mountain Medicine notes, the great majority of the problems comes when people with AMS continue to ascend. So it's really easily avoidable. So if you take nothing else away from this mini course, we hope you take this lesson, and that's not to go higher when you have AMS symptoms. I'd like to share with you a little of my experience, and that's I've definitely done better using Diamox, the altitude sickness medicine, even if I didn't fly, like on my last trip to Kham, when we acclimated for 1 night at an altitude nearly the same as Xining. And I would go even slower if possible next time. I would spend 2 days at the intermediate altitude. So on flying into Lhasa, I did much better on Diamox than without it. So in all cases, rest was very helpful in Lhasa after flying in. I mean, really serious rest, like lying down a lot and not doing stuff like climbing the steps of the Potala the day after you arrive. So, Lobsang, you want to tell your experience?
Yeah. I went to Tibet 2 times after I left Tibet. Both times I flew. First time I got headache and didn't feel good for the first few days. So I rested a few days. After that, I was totally fine. The second time I went to Tibet, I didn't get any rest in the first few days. So I never felt good, even though I was there 5 weeks. I never felt good.
And here are a couple of stories from our travelers. Seraphine Ellis went to Everest Base Camp this year, and she told us, I experienced no altitude sickness as I was taking Diamox. I was happy to be able to discuss this issue with Yolanda prior to travel. And then another of our travelers, Carrie, went to Kham this summer, and she said purchasing the Yuangdu Tibetan Yuangdu Altitude Sickness Toolkit was one of the best decisions I made for this journey. I followed their suggestions. I did not get altitude sickness. I fully enjoyed my time in Tibet, and I fell in love with the culture and the people of Tibet. So the bottom line is that you need to remember to prevent death or severe illness from altitude sickness, just follow the 3 basic rules from altitude sickness experts. Please do this and have a healthy, happy trip. Come home safe. So you probably didn't know how to stay safe from altitude sickness, and if you didn't, now you do. A lot of people take an 8-day trip to Everest Base Camp, and without heeding altitude sickness advice, the basic advice like we're giving in this class, they can feel sick for 3 to 4 days of that trip, and that's really no fun. So we encourage you to make the choice to feel better when you're traveling. Okay, let's take a few more of your questions. So again, you can use the chat box, Facebook, or you can ask us questions on...
Bill said it's the Diamox is going to work.
Okay, Bill says Diamox worked well for him. And Richard says, my doctor suggested reishi mushrooms also. And chlorophyll and rhodiola can also be helpful. And also DRSETHU747 says, I've gone to Mount Kailash a few times, awesome, and used Diamox and it works well. So I just want to comment, Richard and Billy, on the alternative medicines. Many people, normally I love alternative medicines, but many people do use them, and they use the rhodiola and what's another popular one? I think it's St. John's wort. I can't remember. There's many of them that folks use. There are a lot of Chinese medicines that folks use, and that's as well. And there are some other even Tibetan medicines that people use. And I just want to say, I did a lot of research on this when we were researching our ebook on altitude sickness, and they unfortunately, the only thing that is proven in what's the word? Like in blind studies, the only thing that's proven to help is Diamox, the acetazolamide. So the other things, there have been studies, but they're not, I don't know how to say, they've neither fully discounted nor fully confirmed. So there's just no confirmed evidence right now that you would not get altitude sickness by using some of these alternative medicines. Hopefully, I think there's great interest in them, and hopefully there will be more. But just so you know that there's just no strong evidence right now for that. And then we will let's answer Guy's question, going back just a little bit about the visas and the permits. So how long are the visa and the permit valid? The visa, it's very variable. My first visa was valid for 3 months, I think. So this was coming out of the United States. And then...
yeah, that's correct.
But more recently, so those of you who are from the United States has an agreement now with China, so that my most recent visa was a 10-year visa. So when you applied through and that was like by default. I wasn't even trying to get that. So Americans applying for visas now get a 10-year visa, which is fantastic. And other ones, I don't know. So I think it's variable, but for the U.S. anyway, it used to be three months. And the permit,
I think permit is the 3 weeks or 2 weeks, whatever you want to spend it in Tibet. That time you have to apply the permit. So there's no really, I don't think you can get a really long permit.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So your travel agent is gonna book the permit for you. Is gonna arrange the permit for you, and so they, you have to tell exactly when you're coming and when you're going, and that's exactly how long your permit will be. Hope that helps. Okay, so Billy also says, we use Diamox plus the supplements, chlorophyll and rhodiola. Also, we use canisters of oxygen, which helps. And I would say, don't be shy about using oxygen. There's nothing wrong with it. I felt kind of like a sissy if I was going to use oxygen, but there is absolutely nothing wrong. And I would do it again. And I would do it next time in a flash. And Carolyn, hello, Carolyn. She says, does drinking lots of water help prevent altitude sickness? So there's a happy medium, Carolyn. So people... there's a kind of myth that you need to drink tons of water, but actually, like anything else, like too much water can be you can reach kind of toxic levels of water. So you want to drink plenty of water. You want to be hydrated, but you don't want to like kind of chug water like a crazy person. So, gosh, I don't know how to delicately say how much you have enough to drink enough water, but you basically need to drink enough water, but not too much, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Should we go to the next?
So I think we should go to the next section. And a reminder to you guys that you can join our membership during this class. So during the time of the class, you can join it. You can save 30% on that, and you just click the yellow button below the video to learn more. All right, so let's just review the points that we've learned so far in this. So first, for your visa, use a visa agency. To get your Tibet permit for travel in the TAR, do it through a reliable Tibetan agency. And third, follow the experts' 3 simple rules to avoid altitude sickness, and that is ascend slowly, know and respond to your warning signs, and descend quickly to avoid worsening symptoms. And a quick reminder, so we're going to give you some free bonuses to thank you for joining us on this class. They're coming up before we finish tonight, but first we want to let you know what you can do if you need more help. So at the beginning of this webinar, we told you we'd give you everything that we could in our time together, and then we'd show you where to get more help, get more information if you need that. And let me show you now how to get more help from us to get into Tibet easier and faster. So you have access to our super simple and clear program that's called Experience Tibet. We've been your coaches for today, but we've only had time to give you the highlights of a couple of important steps. And in the Experience Tibet membership community, we can be your coaches for as long as you want. So inside the community, we show you everything you need for the easiest way and the best way to travel to Tibet. So you get step-by-step directions on exactly how to plan your trip. We literally start with step 1 and help you decide where you want to go, then to step 2, deciding when is the best time for you to go, on through each step, and you need to plan an awesome trip. And this has the huge advantage of supporting local Tibetan businesses. Plus, there's the community discussion forum where we answer your questions, your specific questions about your personal trip. Everybody has a different situation and special questions, so in the forums, we get in there and help you plan your trip. And you can easily sign up right now and get all the help you need for your trip. Just click on the long yellow button under this video to learn more. If you sign up during the mini course, you can save 30% off our normal pricing, and that means you lock in the lowest price available for as long as you want to be a member. And we want to give a big welcome to everyone that's joining, and we want to give you a look at what you're signing up for. So here's what you get inside the membership. So after you log in, the first page you come to is a Start Here section. And inside the Start Here section, the first thing you do is introduce yourself to the group, and most importantly, let us know what you specifically need in relation to your Tibet travel. Then second is a super important piece. This is where we connect you to an excellent Tibetan-owned agent who, along with us, will answer all of your travel questions. Then you can also watch some videos to help you get the best experience out of using the community. So next, let me show you the courses inside the program. There are 3 full-length courses that members get inside the Experience Tibet. Let's look at the first one. That's How to Travel to Tibet. So in this course, we walk you through planning a trip to Tibet from start to finish. So this image shows the first of 6 of the 14 steps. And if you follow the course, by the end of it, you will have one of the best Tibetan-owned agencies in Tibet working with you on planning a trip with a local Tibetan guide. And then you will also have learned how to set up your international and domestic flights and trains, your hotels both in China and in Tibet, and plus your visas and your permits. So one of the most important things you get in the course is some of the best and most up-to-date altitude sickness prevention information that's available for Tibet. So we weren't happy at all with what was available online. So we did a bunch of deep research and we created a 74-page ebook on avoiding altitude sickness in Tibet. There's really nothing like our ebook anywhere. Plus a 10-step checklist if you need the information faster. So you get both of these inside the membership. The units in the course include quick reference charts like this one. This helps you decide the best time to go to Lhasa. So you see this is a spreadsheet with the months. This is half of it. You get the months, and then the weather, the temperature, the high, the lows, the days of rain, the average precipitation, festivals, tourism season, and closures. So all of this just kind of helps you decide when's a good time for you to go. And then we use video when we need to walk you through a process, like applying for your visa at a visa agency. We really take you step by step through that. So also we have printable checklists like this packing list. Here's what a former traveler with Yoangdu has said about her experience with the packing list. She said the trip was amazing. The people and the scenery really can't get much better. I would definitely recommend this trip to my family and friends. Also, thank you for the packing list. I went through each item and made sure that I packed what you suggested. There were a few things that I didn't bring, but overall I felt very prepared for any situation. That's from Bridget, an Irish traveler who went to Everest Base Camp on a group tour with us in July 2016. But those are all the trainings you get about the travel. But for many of you, the most valuable piece of the membership is our discussion forums with other travelers to Tibet, where you can ask us your questions and we answer directly. If we don't know the answer, we call on our contacts in Tibet to help get you the most up-to-date answer. So sometimes our travelers who have already been to Tibet once will help you. We also will have monthly live Q&A calls so that you can ask us questions in real time. And there are some massive bonuses. One of these is the Tibetan Home Cooking Guide and videos, which gives you 27 favorite Tibet recipes. These are Lobsang's recipes and step-by-step videos for every single one of those. We also give you this huge practical guide to Tibetan Buddhism for those of you who are interested in learning a bit about Tibetan Buddhism. This is an 8-week course we developed for people interested in learning some basic practices. They have videos, audios, printable prayers and mantras, and a whole lot of other things. Okay, your free bonuses to thank you for joining us on this class are coming up in just a few minutes, promise. So right now, here's what to do next. To sign up, you click on the yellow button on this webinar page under the video. When you click, you'll come to this page. And to join Experience Tibet, then you click on the Yes, I want to go to Tibet button, that green. Then you'll come to this page. And this gives you the different options to buy our course only or to join the Experience Tibet monthly membership for monthly, or you can join it 6 months at a time. You choose which level works best for you, and you click on the button at the bottom. Then you come to this order form. You click Order Now, enter your payment information, and then we're going to send you emails with your access links. So once you're logged in, the first page you come to is the Start Here section that we talked about before, and we will start to help you immediately. So you can be inside our membership community in a few minutes and getting our personal help for your Tibet trip. So if you wonder about our guarantee, here it is. So we are so confident that you will like our community and training that we offer a 90-day, 100% money-back guarantee. But we know you're going to love it and you're going to love Tibet. So it's one of the world's most special places. And if you don't like Experience Tibet, we will gladly return your money. So if you don't like our membership, we will gladly return your money because we have no interest in making any bad karma for anybody, and we know you're going to like it. So here's what our traveler Fabian Andrioli said about his recent trip. Tashi, who was his guide, made all of our wishes come true, and we were able to come very close to the culture and had so many wonderful encounters with local people, all thanks to Tashi. We are sure to come back sometime to discover more of Kham and Amdo, or honestly, I could do exactly the same itinerary next time again, and I would enjoy it just as much. So thank you so much for your help and your useful website, says Fabian. Okay, we don't want to leave without a live Q&A, so we have another chunk of time here to hang out and answer your questions. And you may have the content, any questions that you have about anything, about traveling to Tibet or our community. And just, again, use the chat box and ask us anything you like. And this means that you have 15 minutes or so, or however long it takes, to take advantage of the discount pricing as well to get up to 30% off on our Experience Tibet membership or the one-time only class. So we need to give you also, so Lobsang, in just actually before we start these questions, Lobsang, can you drop the link for the free the bonuses for folks into the thing? Yes. Thank you. So just a second. So Lobsang's just dropping the link for the freebies into the chat. Thank you for joining us on this. And let's go to the questions. Okay. So let's see. When I visited the TIR, I had a multiple entry visa, so I did not have to mention the TIR since it was a visit number 2. With the new 10-year U.S. visa, this should make things easier for Americans. That's an excellent point. I think that's true, right? Yeah, that's really good because we don't have to mention it anytime after you get your first one. You're kind of good to go. I also want to answer a question that someone asked earlier, and she said, is it very risky if I travel to Tibet again since my first time I got motion sickness? And we mentioned this earlier, but as far as I know, the only thing that puts someone at slightly or a little more greater risk of getting altitude sickness is if you have gotten it once before. However, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get it. So altitude sickness is a really weird thing. You can have gone to high altitude and not gotten altitude sickness, and you can get it the next time you go, or vice versa. You can have altitude sickness and not get it. But if you do get altitude sickness the first time, there's a very decent chance that you will get it again. So we suggest in that case, as we would for anyone, so first consult your doctor and let them know the situation. And sometimes it's really good to see a travel doctor instead of just a regular doctor. So regular docs sometimes don't know much about altitude sickness, where travel doctors seem to know more. So, maybe ask your doctor to give you a referral to a travel doctor. And then once you talk to the travel doctor, see if it's a good idea for you to use Diamox. And then just kind of for everyone, it's very hard to travel to Tibet ascending at the rate that is recommended by high altitude experts. And that's something like, there's a formula, once you get to something like 9,000 feet, you're supposed to not, and I'm sorry, I can't convert this to meters, but once you get to 9,000 feet, you're not supposed to ascend more than 1,500 feet a day. And that means your sleeping altitude is not supposed to get over 1,500 a day for 3 days, and then you need another rest day. So it's very difficult, just the way that the travel patterns are in Tibet. It's extremely very hard to do that. So myself, I would always choose to take Diamox, but again, I'm not a doctor. And then just on the Diamox, I want to talk about dosages a little bit. So the first time we went, I was taking a dosage of I think 500 milligrams a day, and then that was really too much. So more recently, the evidence suggests that 250 milligrams is plenty, and the pills often come in 250 milligrams, and you can just, what I did, I was given it by a doctor at Kaiser in Northern California, and they just suggested cut the pill in half, take half of it in the morning, half at night. So that really helps cut down the side benefits of the Diamox, which are a little weird. It's like increased urination, and then you have tingling. It's kind of quite uncomfortable, actually, if you have too much of it in your system, tingling in your toes and your fingers. So it's not very pleasant. So we recommend that talk to your doctor, and then ask your doctor that you've heard this about the dosage, because I did that when I went to COM last fall, and it was definitely much better. So Dr. Situ asked, how long does it take to go to Mount Everest base camp from the U.S. and back? So your typical trip, so from the U.S. it takes like 24 hours to get to mainland China?
Yeah, then also takes
well, then you need another day. So let's
day or two.
Well, let's do it backwards. So the trip from Lhasa, you need to go from Lhasa typically when you're going to Everest Base Camp, almost always. We don't know of any other route. So you go from Lhasa, and the typical trip is 8 days. We'd actually like to see those be a little longer to give you more time to acclimate, but that's the very common kind of tourist trip to Lhasa. You can't go less than that. It's too fast. So let's say 8 days out of Lhasa. And then you need, let's say you take the train, so you need 2 days, I think, on the train. Let's say you need 2 nights in Xining. Yeah. So that's 8 and 4 is what? Is that 12 or 11?
Yeah.
Okay, 12. Whatever. Let's say it's 12. Sorry, I'm terrible at math. And then you need time to get, let's say, from Beijing to Xining, and that's, a couple hours flight or something. I don't know exactly how much it is. Let's say 3 hours. So let's say a day for that. And then you need a full day to get to Beijing. So
like 15 or 16
solid
days.
15 or 16 days, we would say. I hope that helps. And then we say, am I right to assume the Tibet permit? So Ket Unlimited says, am I right to assume the Tibet permit is only required for visits to the TAR? If I only want to visit Kham and Amdo, I wouldn't need a permit. That's correct. So you do need the Chinese visa, but you don't need the permit. But again, as we mentioned during the mini course, you do want to get a guide, and you probably want to get a driver. It's very not recommended to just try and do that on your own. I am planning, and T Zen says, I'm planning to study abroad in China soon. Is traveling to Tibet from China any different? Yes. So if you're, in the sense that if you're a student, definitely if you're employed by a Chinese agency, you need to give a letter. And I believe if you're a student as well. So you still need a permit, right? Mm-hmm. So you still need a permit, but you need to get a letter probably from your university or whoever you do. Is photography, so Guy says, is photography easy, or I'm better to forget that? So Guy, I'm assuming that you mean, is it easy to, is it okay to take pictures? So there's two problems, there are two potential problems with photography. Basically, you can definitely take excellent pictures, and don't worry, definitely don't try to forget about it in Tibet. Do take your pictures. The two issues are, if your camera is at very high altitude, if you have a digital type camera that uses a
sensor.
Not a sensor. Some cameras have altitude limits sometimes, and so if you have the kind of camera that is running on a cushion of compressed air, if there's anything inside the camera that's doing that, the altitude affects the air pressure, and it can cause it to that little air compression to go down. So this is something you need to check with your particular camera. So some devices, this is something we're going to actually write a post about in the future. But and in terms of taking photos of people, it's the same as it is everywhere. In Tibet, it's a little bit different in that you don't want to take pictures of anything even remotely political or military, right?
Right. Buildings, military marching, and some kind of like that. You're not allowed to take it. Also, I think I wouldn't form you are a photographer. They mark you as a journalist. So really, you don't want to show those kind of suspicions.
Yes, absolutely. Don't say that you're a photographer on the website. But otherwise you can take pictures, and the only other thing I would say is like anywhere, just ask people if you can take their picture. And many Tibetans, less in cities or in Lhasa itself, somebody might be unwilling for you to take their picture. Usually it's okay. But outside, like in the countryside, I've found it's very rare for somebody to say, well, it's not true, not rare, but usually they do. Okay, and then Richard says, His Holiness the 16th Karmapa was my refuge Lama. Is travel to Surpu still recommended? So Richard, I'm sorry, I don't know if Surpu is in the TAR.
Yeah, Surpu is in TAR. But I don't know, normally that monastery seems like nobody travels that much, Probably you can go, but we don't know. Or we can check with our travel agency.
Yeah, this is a great question for our travel agency. They can tell us specifically if Surpu is any problem to go. And Ket says, thank you. I think I don't need a visa to visit China with a Singapore passport. I went to Shenzhen from Singapore with no visa in February. Fantastic. So if you were just going to come in Amdo, and if you don't need the Chinese visa, then you'd be in great shape. You wouldn't need anything. And then Ket says, yes, I've heard about not mentioning I'm a photographer or an artist or a journalist on the application forms.
Yes,
all of that is true. And just so you know, if anybody happens to have any kind of diplomatic job as well, that also requires a special kind of visa or permit. And so we're just going to check really quick if there are any. Okay, here's from Arthur.
No, that's one that's done. Yes,
Okay, fine.
We
Okay,
check
and we're
on
just
the
going to check really quick
Facebook.
on Facebook. And if there are no questions there, we're just going to wrap up.
Seems like we don't see any questions.
Yes. So, you guys, we want to thank you so much for joining us for this mini course. And unless, let's just pop right up there, one last chance for questions.
Otherwise,
Oh, Billy says they went to Tibet in 2014. Yeah, things can happen, but that's pretty encouraging if you were able to go in 2014.
yeah, probably it's okay then. But we'll check with our travel agency. We'll get back to you, Richard.
Yes. So, and if we, Richard, if you could shoot us an email, that would be great. Then we can just reply to one of ours, and then we can let you know about that. Okay, guys, I think this is a great time to wrap it up, and we've been almost an hour exactly. Great. Thank you so much for joining this course. We hope we see you in the Experience Tibet community, and we really hope that this mini course has been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, joining with us, and hopefully we'll see you in Tibetan community side. Thank you.
Yeah. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.